The galaxy had rules. Thousands of them, written over millions of years by the Galactic Council, a coalition of 47 species who valued order above all else. Rule 7834 was clear. Distress signals from quarantine zones must be ignored. No exceptions. No debates. The quarantine protocol existed for a reason, they said. Some problems were better left to solve themselves. Captain, Sarah Chun didn't care much for rules that let people die, as she stood on the bridge of the UNSC Defiance, a human exploration vessel, 3 months into its maiden voyage beyond Earth's local cluster. The ship was small by galactic standards, just 200 crew members and enough firepower to make pirates think twice. Humanity was new to the stars, having joined the galactic community only 5 years ago after developing faster-than-light travel on their own. Most species still saw them as children playing with dangerous toys. Captain, we're picking up something strange, Lieutenant Marcus Hayes announced from the communication station. His dark eyes narrowed at his screen. It's a distress beacon. Old frequency, but the message is clear. They're dying. Sarah moved to his station, her boots magnetic against the deck plating. Origin? Sector 77 Gamma. Marcus pulled up a star map. A red dot pulsed in an area marked with harsh yellow warnings. The Viridian Quarantine Zone. The bridge went quiet. Every member of the crew knew about quarantine zones. They'd been briefed during their departure from Earth. These were areas declared off-limits by the Council, places where wars had gone wrong, where diseases couldn't be contained, where entire civilizations had collapsed. The Council's policy was simple. Seal it off and let time handle the rest. How long has that signal been broadcasting? Sarah asked. 3 days, maybe 4. The message repeats every 2 hours. Marcus hesitated. Captain, I translated it. They're calling for medical aid. Something about a plague and children dying. They're begging for help. Sarah's jaw tightened. She thought of her own daughter back on Earth, safe in New Seattle. She thought of every parent who'd ever had to watch their child suffer. Distance? 16 hours at maximum burn. Council protocol says, began Commander James Park, her first officer. He was a career military man, 20 years older than Sarah, with gray temples and a face that had seen too many compromises. I know what it says. Sarah cut him off. Her voice was steel. Marcus, can you isolate the signal? Let the crew hear it. Marcus nodded and patched it through. Static filled the bridge, and a voice desperate, exhausted, speaking in Galactic Common with an accent that stuttered through universal translators. This is Dr. Kale of Viridian Station. We are dying. Our children are dying. The plague spreads faster than we can treat it. We have 17 hours before total colony failure. We've called the Council. They won't answer. They've abandoned us. If anyone can hear this, please. We don't ask for much. Just medicine. Just a chance. Please. The voice broke at the end. In the background, Sarah could hear something that needed no translation. The sound of a child crying. The bridge crew looked at their captain. They were all thinking the same thing. They were all remembering why they'd joined the exploration corps in the first place. Not for glory or discovery, but because humanity had always believed in one simple idea. When someone calls for help, you answer. Captain, James said quietly, if we respond to this, we'll be violating Council law. Earth's membership could be revoked. We could be tried, imprisoned. Humanity's been part of the galactic community for only 5 years. We can't afford to. Can't afford to what? Sarah turned to face him. Can't afford to save children? Can't afford to be human? That's not what The Council can have its rules. I have mine. Sarah moved to her command chair and sat down. Helm, Plot a course for Viridian Station. Maximum burn. Engineering. I want every bit of speed you can give me. Medical. Prepare emergency quarantine protocols and load every broad-spectrum treatment we have. Aye, Captain, came the chorus of responses. Her crew didn't hesitate. They knew their captain. More importantly, they knew themselves. James stepped closer, lowering his voice. Sarah, this could mean war. The Council doesn't tolerate violations of the quarantine protocol. They'll see this as humans thinking they're above galactic law. Sarah met his eyes. Then let them come. I've read the files, James. This quarantine wasn't established because of some uncontrollable disease. Viridian rebelled against Council trade restrictions 30 years ago. The Council declared them a security threat and sealed the sector. This isn't about safety. It's about punishment. You don't know that for certain. No, but I know what I hear in that message. She gestured to the speakers, where Dr. Kale's plea still echoed. I hear someone who followed every rule and still got abandoned. The galaxy might be okay with that. Humanity isn't. The Defiance's engines roared to life, pushing the ship to maximum velocity. Behind them, the safe shipping lanes of Council space fell away. Ahead lay the Viridian quarantine zone, marked with warnings that had kept the galaxy at bay for 3 decades. Sarah Chun didn't care about warnings. She cared about the timer counting down in her head 17 hours until total colony failure. 17 hours to prove that humanity belonged in the stars, not because they followed every rule, but because they knew when rules needed to be broken in the darkness ahead. The distress signal pulsed like a heartbeat, and for the first time in 30 years, someone was coming to answer it. Asterisk the Viridian quarantine. Zone had teeth. Captain Sarah Chun watched her tactical display as 3 Council enforcement vessels materialized from faster-than-light travel, positioning themselves in a perfect intercept formation. They were Thyerian cruisers, sleek, silver ships 3 times the size of the Defiance, built by a species that had been enforcing galactic law for 10,000 years. Captain, we're being hailed, Marcus announced. It's Enforcement Commander Xyloth. Audio only. Put him through. A voice filled the bridge, cold and mechanical through the translator. Human vessel Defiance. You are approaching a quarantine zone in violation of Galactic Council Statute 7834. Reverse course immediately, or you will be detained. Sarah leaned forward in her chair. Commander Xyloth, this is Captain Chun. We've received a distress signal from Viridian Station. They're experiencing a medical emergency. Children are dying. The quarantine exists for the protection of the galaxy. Their situation is regrettable, but necessary. Necessary? Sarah's voice sharpened. You're telling me it's necessary to let children die? I'm telling you that one station's tragedy does not justify risking billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. The quarantine protocols are absolute. This is your final warning, Captain. Turn back. Sarah glanced at her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka. The young woman's fingers danced across her console, analyzing the Thyerian ships. She caught Sarah's eye and gave a slight shake of her head. Translation: We can't win a direct fight. Sarah hadn't planned on a direct fight. Commander Xyloth, I'm going to tell you something about humans, Sarah said calmly. We have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We've spent our entire history learning that lesson the hard way. I'm not turning back. Silence on the channel. Then you will be fired upon. I understand. Sarah cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Helm, execute pattern Delta 7. Engineering, divert all non-essential power to forward shields. Weapons, if they fire, I want point defense only. We're not here to fight. We're here to get past them. They have us outgunned 5-1, James warned. They also have protocols. Sarah smiled grimly. Yuki, what's the Thyerian Rules of Engagement Handbook say about firing on ships attempting humanitarian relief? Yuki pulled up the data. They're required to issue 3 warnings, demonstrate force with warning shots, and only use lethal force if the target vessel fires first or poses an immediate threat to Council assets. So we have about 90 seconds before this gets real. Sarah's hands gripped her armrests. Helm, I need you to be unpredictable. Make them work for every shot. Don't give them a clean targeting solution. The Defiance suddenly rolled hard to port, engines screaming. On the view screen, bright blue energy bolts streaked past warning shots, placed precisely where they predicted the ship would be. But humanity hadn't spent 5 years in galactic space learning nothing. Sarah's pilot, Lieutenant Jessica Ghost Rodriguez, had flown combat simulations against every known species. She'd studied their tactics, their patterns, their predictable adherence to doctrine. Thyerians fought by the book. Humans wrote new books every day. The Defiance jinked left. Dove rolled inverted and accelerated straight toward the gap between 2 of the enforcement vessels. Energy bolts chased them, always a half-second behind. The Thyerian ships adjusted formation, trying to close the gap, but they moved in perfect coordination, which made them predictable. 15 seconds to the gap, Ghost called out, sweat beading on her forehead. They're charging weapons for a coordinated strike. Marcus, open a channel to Viridian Station, Sarah ordered. Broadband, maximum power. I want the whole sector to hear this. Channel open. Sarah's voice rang out across the void. Dr. Kale, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the human vessel Defiance. We received your distress call. We're coming. The Council says we should leave you to die. Humanity says no one gets left behind. Hold on. The response came back immediately. Dr. Kale's voice choked with disbelief. You came? You actually came? The Council ships, they'll destroy you. Let me worry about that. How many people are on your station? 4,200. 800 are children under 15 years old. The plague has infected 70% of the population. We're running out of time. Behind the Defiance, the Thyerian ships opened fire in earnest. Energy bolts hammered their rear shields, each impact shaking the deck. Warning lights flashed across every console. Shields at 60%, Yuki reported. They're not playing anymore, Captain. Neither are we. Ghost, get us through that gap. Now. The Defiance shot forward like a missile. Engines pushed beyond safety limits. The 2 Thyerian cruisers tried to close the gap, their massive hulls moving with ponderous inevitability. For a moment, it looked like they'd crush the human ship between them. Then Ghost did something no Thyerian pilot would ever consider. She cut main engines completely and fired only the maneuvering thrusters, making the Defiance spin like a bullet as it passed between the cruisers. The ship corkscrewed through the gap with less than 50 meters of clearance on either side, so close that Sarah could see the alien crew members through the Thyerian viewports, their faces frozen in shock. Then they were through. We're past the blockade. Marcus shouted. Quarantine boundary in 3 minutes. Behind them, the Thyerian ships scrambled to pursue, but they were capital ships built for power, not agility. The Defiance had already gained a critical lead. Commander Zyloth is hailing again, Marcus said. Ignore it. Get me Dr. Kale. Sarah stood up. Doctor, we're entering the zone. What do we need to know about this plague? It's a respiratory infection, mutated from a common galactic virus. Highly contagious, but treatable with standard antivirals if administered early. We ran out of medicine 2 weeks ago. The Council won't send supplies into quarantine zones. Sarah felt cold fury settle into her bones. This wasn't some mysterious disease. This was bureaucracy choosing to let people die rather than admit their quarantine was political, not medical. "We have antivirals," Sarah said. "We're 12 hours out. Keep your people alive until then." "Captain," Dr. Kale's voice cracked. "Why? Why would you risk everything for strangers?" Sarah thought of her daughter, of every child she'd ever known, of the simple truth that had driven humanity to reach for the stars in the first place. "Because you called for help," she said simply. And humans answer. The Defiance crossed into the Viridian quarantine zone. Behind them, the Thyerian ships held position at the boundary, unwilling to follow. Ahead, a dying station waited for the miracle they'd stopped believing in. And somewhere in the halls of the Galactic Council, alarms began to sound. Humanity had just broken the oldest rule in the galaxy. Asterisk. Viridian Station hung in space like a dying flower, its outer rings dark where power had failed, its docking ports sealed against the plague within. Captain Sarah Chun watched through the view screen as the Defiance approached, and her heart sank at what she saw. This wasn't a military installation or a mining outpost. It was a colony station, the kind built for families, for lives, for futures. She could see gardens through the transparent sections, now wilted and brown. Playgrounds stood empty on the residential decks. Somewhere inside that failing structure, 4,000 people waited to see if hope came too late. "Medical teams report," Sarah commanded. Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice came through from the medical bay. "We're ready, Captain." 24 med techs in full quarantine gear. Enough broad-spectrum antivirals for 5,000 people, portable medical equipment, and emergency supplies. "We can set up triage stations within an hour of boarding." "Good. Marcus, tell Dr. Kale we're preparing to dock." "Captain," James said quietly, moving to stand beside her chair, "once we dock, we're committed. If any of our crew gets infected, if we bring this plague back to human space, we won't." Sarah met his eyes. "Because we're going to do this right. Full quarantine protocols. No one comes back aboard Defiance until they're cleared. We'll transfer supplies and personnel through airlocks, maintain separation, and treat everyone before extraction. And if the Council sends more ships, if they decide to make an example of us," Sarah smiled without humor, "then they'll have to explain to the whole galaxy why they destroyed a medical rescue mission." I made sure our transmissions were on open channels. Every species with a radio telescope heard what we're doing and why. The Defiance eased into Viridian Station's primary docking port with the gentle precision of ghosts piloting. Clamps engaged with hollow thuds that echoed through the hull. On the other side of that airlock door, thousands of desperate people waited. Sarah stood in the airlock with the first medical team. Suited in full quarantine gear, Dr. Vasquez stood beside her, medical scanner already in hand. When the inner door opened, the smell hit them even through their filter's sickness. Fear and the acrid stench of failing life support systems. Dr. Kale waited on the other side. He was a Viridian, a species Sarah had only seen in databases. Tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to hold entire oceans of exhaustion. His medical coat was stained. His hands trembled with fatigue. Behind him, Sarah could see dozens of people lying on makeshift beds in what had once been a cargo bay. "You really came," Kale whispered. I can't believe you really came." "We're here," Sarah said. "Show us your sickest patients. We'll start treatment immediately." The next 6 hours became a blur of organized chaos. Dr. Vasquez and her team moved through the station like a well-trained army, setting up treatment centers, administering antivirals, stabilizing critical patients. The human medics worked alongside Viridian, doctors who'd been fighting this plague for weeks with nothing but hope. And hope, determination. Sarah found herself in the children's ward, helping to organize supply distribution. A small Viridian child She couldn't have been more than 5 in human. Years lay in a bed that was too big for her tiny frame. Her breathing was shallow. Her blue skin had taken on a gray tinge. A woman Sarah assumed was the child's mother sat beside the bed, holding her daughter's hand, singing something soft in a language the translator couldn't parse. Dr. Vasquez knelt beside the bed, scanner in hand. Severe respiratory infection, fluid in the lungs, fever at critical levels. She looked up at Sarah. "Captain, I need to intubate her. Her lungs are failing." "Do it," Sarah said. She watched as Elena worked with swift precision, inserting the breathing tube, connecting monitors, administering a cocktail of medications. The child's mother never stopped singing, never let go of her daughter's hand. Sarah knelt beside the woman and gently touched her shoulder. The mother looked at her with eyes full of tears. Through the translator, her voice came out broken. "Will she live?" Sarah wanted to promise, wanted to guarantee, but she'd learned long ago that false hope was its own cruelty. "We're doing everything we can. The medicine we brought it works. She just needs time to fight." "Why?" the mother asked. "Why did you come?" "The council said no one would help. They said we deserved this for defying them. Why would strangers risk everything?" Sarah thought about how to explain humanity's complicated relationship with rules and right and wrong. How to convey the simple truth that had driven her species from caves to the stars. "Because on Earth," Sarah said slowly, "we have millions of different cultures, languages, and beliefs. But there's one thing almost all of us agree on. When a child is in danger, you don't ask whose child it is. You don't check the rules. You don't calculate the cost. You just help. It's the most human thing there is." The mother's hand tightened on her daughter's. "Thank you. Thank you." Hours passed. The antivirals began to work. One by one, patients stabilized. The gray pallor began to fade from skin. Breathing became easier. Fever broke. In the children's ward, the little girl who'd been dying opened her eyes and asked for water. Her mother sobbed with relief. Sarah was coordinating supply, distribution, when Marcus's voice crackled through her comb. "Captain, you need to see this, now." She made her way to the station's command center, where Dr. Kale had set up a communications array. On the screen, dozens of transmission logs scrolled past new distress signals, all from quarantine zones across the galaxy. "They heard what you did," Kale said, his voice shaking. "Other quarantine stations, colonies that were sealed off and abandoned. They heard that humans answered when everyone else turned away. Captain, they're all calling for help now. Hundreds of thousands of people who'd given up hope." Sarah stared at the screen. Each message represented lives hanging in the balance. People who'd been written off by the galaxy's bureaucracy, deemed acceptable losses in the name of order and control. How many? She asked quietly. 47 distress calls in the last 3 hours. More coming in every minute. James appeared beside her. "Sarah, we can't save them all. We're one ship. We don't have the supplies, the personnel, No," Sarah agreed. "We can't save them all. But we're not alone anymore." She turned to Marcus. "Open a channel. Direct to Earth. Emergency priority. I need to speak with Fleet Admiral Harrison." The channel opened. Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared on the screen, his expression grave. "Captain Shun, I've been watching your unauthorized mission with considerable concern. The Council has filed formal protests. They're threatening sanctions against Earth if—" "Admiral," Sarah interrupted. "With respect, sir, I don't care about sanctions. I need every medical ship humanity can spare sent to Viridian Station immediately. And I need you to transmit a message to every human vessel in explored space." "What message?" Sarah looked at the scrolling distress signals. then back at the Admiral. That the galaxy has people calling for help. And humans are going to answer. All of them. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then something changed in his expression. A hardness that came from a man who remembered why humanity had reached for the stars in the first place. "I'll have ships there within 48 hours, he said. "And Captain? Give them hell." A transmission ended. Sarah turned to find Dr. Kale staring at her with something approaching awe. "You're really going to do it," he whispered. "You're going to challenge the entire galactic order." Sarah thought of the little girl breathing easier in the medical bay, of her mother's tears, of 4,000 people who would live because someone had the courage to break a rule. The galaxy had its chance to do the right thing, Sarah said. They chose paperwork over lives, bureaucracy over compassion, rules over children. She smiled, and there was steel in it. Humanity chooses differently. Behind her, the distress signals kept coming, and across human space, ships began powering up their engines. Medical teams assembled. Supplies were loaded. The galaxy had maintained its peace through indifference and isolation. Humanity was about to teach them a different way. Asterisk.